Good morning, everybody. We're back in the book of Numbers. And last week, if you'll remember, I got through the daily feast, the weekly feast, the monthly feast, and the annual feast, and a bit confusing to me at times because it's something strange and foreign. You know, it's not a celebratory actions that I'm used to, certain dates. I mean, we've got our own different thing nowadays, where we're at. But that's way back then, but it's good to, I guess the big thing to glean out of that God wanted them to remember Him, what He had delivered them from, and it was a joyous occasion, and also there were times to reflect on their own actions, not just to take it for granted and just go about daily life and not ever think about a greater power, about life and death. And so I feel like God kept that on their minds and in their hearts. And with that going on every day, like we saw, they were pretty close to God in their beliefs, as long as they were doing it from the heart. And then we got started on chapter 30 a little bit. And we're going to see in chapter 30, we're talking about vows. And at the end of the last chapters we studied, if you'll remember, the Moabites were worried about the Israelites overtaking them because there was a massive camp of Israelites in the Jordan Valley there in their neighborhood, and they had already had been unstoppable, so to say. So the king of Moab, he was worried about them, and he tried to get old Balaam to get a curse on God's people, and that didn't work out. But backhanded Balaam, like I'd call him, and sneaky, he gave them some advice to give them some moral corruption to work on the camp of Israel. And he used them, he told them to use the women of Midian and put them outside the camp and tempt the men of Israel. Moral corruption, then it led into idolatry. And then God struck down 24,000 of them right there. And, of course, old Balak was hoping it'd be more than that. But God, being the merciful God He was, it didn't work out that way for Balak. So, there toward the end of the chapter, I think we read that God said He's going to make good on taking care of the Midianites. And that's where we're going to be in this chapter 2 this morning. We're going to see their annihilation. So we're going to study a little bit about some vows here. And then God's vengeance on the Midianites, and then we're going to see the victory of the Israelites as they take on the Midianites in this part of the world there. All right, so roughly I'm going to read verse 1. We read like 1 through 5 last week, but I'll read through these quickly. I won't keep you here long, but just to kind of get us back into chapter 30 of Numbers. And Moses spake unto the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. So this is something God has commanded. This is a rule from God. If a man vow a vow unto the Lord, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. All right, so that verse right there is saying if a man's going to vow something, that's make an oath. We talked about this a little bit. God don't require man that back then. He didn't require him to make an oath or nothing. But if he so saw fit that he wanted to make one, he better keep his word. And we see, that where we're at today, you can tell even back then the same thing. Man's word is questionable. He tends to tell lies, and he'll tend to make oaths and not keep them, or tell people he's going to do something and not do it. So this is where these oaths come in, and God says that's not right. You need to keep your word. Why do you think we got contracts today? I told you last week, you go down to somebody selling houses, and you walk up to him and say, Brother, I'll just buy that house. I'll take it, and I'll just pay you, and walk off, maybe a handshake. Nobody's going to do that anymore these days. And, that ain't going to happen. You can't go buy a car on a handshake. Why is that? Because man's word ain't his word. And even then they had trouble with people keeping their word. So God's telling them and reminding them, this is a vow. You make a vow, you keep it. You make a vow unto God, you keep it. So, and we're about to get on into it a little deeper. Let me read 3 through 5. If a woman also vow unto the Lord. See, women could make vows back then too, and bind herself by bond, being in her father's house in her youth. Now, I don't know specifically what these people might be making vows, at that time. There are some examples of vows in the Bible, and we'll cover a couple here in a minute. But I don't know specifically, but the head of the household is the man's, where we're going here with this. So you've got, most of these women were probably married, wedded, etc., like that. So they could make vows that they're going to do this. I mentioned Hannah. She wanted a son. She made a vow to God she would give her son to be service of the Lord. It ended up being Samuel. So women, that's one vow that was made there, okay? And her father hear her vow. That's verse 4. This is a woman living at home with her father. And her bond wherewith she hath bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace at her, then all her vows shall stand. And every bond wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand. So you got a woman living at home with her father, and the father, of course, is the authority figure of the home. He is considered the one in charge. He is the one responsible for that family. And him being responsible, if she made a vow that somehow would affect him and make him responsible, if she couldn't keep the vow, he's going to be responsible for keeping it. So he's going to be the one to sit there and say, yes, this vow's okay, or, he'll approve that vow, that's good, you do that. But if he looks at this vow or hears this vow when she says it, and he knows beyond a shadow of a doubt, or he's suspicious that she can't keep this vow, or it's not something worthy, he can speak up and say, no, you cannot. You're in my household, you're my daughter, this is the vow that you're not going to be able to keep. So the authority figure in the house. So the worst thing the father could do here, if she made a bad vow, is sit here and just say nothing. It would be better for him to speak up and say, no, you can't do that. And because it ultimately result in him being responsible. I'm going to give you a good example. This ain't a father and daughter, but did Adam ever speak up and say anything when Eve took and ate of the forbidden fruit? Did he speak up and say one thing? He didn't. He took of it himself. But all he had to do was speak up, might have changed the whole course of history. But that's a whole different thing. So the authority figure has a responsibility to say something then, not be quiet and not put it off. So that's what God's telling them, need to do it then. But if her father disallow her in the day that he heareth, not any of her vows or her bonds wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand, and the Lord shall forgive her because her father disallowed her. All right, so that's what we talked about this, 6 and 8. And if she had at all an husband when she vowed, or uttered aught out of her lips wherewith she bound her soul, and her husband heard it, and held his peace at her in the day that he heard it, then her bond vow shall stand, and her bonds wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. So here's the same thing, not that much different. The husband's supposed to be the authority figure in the house, and if she makes an oath there and it's legitimate and he's okay with it, but if he's not, he needs to speak, because there again, he's going to be bound by that vow if something happens and she can't keep the vow. All right? 10. Okay, but if her husband disallow her on that day, and that he heard it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered with her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, of none effect, and the Lord shall forgive her. But every vow of a widow and of that is divorced, wherewith they have bound their soul, shall stand against her. And if she vowed in her husband's house, or bound her soul by a bond with an oath, and her husband heard it, and held his peace at her, and disallowed her not, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. All right. Vow to God, made in the presence of the husband. Here's the same thing. He's the authority figure. And this here is also these verses right here address. I didn't get all the way down, but let me finish them up. But if her husband had made them void on the day, so if he had said no and heard them, then whatsoever proceedeth out of her lips concerning her vows, or concerning the bond of her soul, shall not stand. Her husband hath made them void, and the Lord shall forgive her. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict her soul, her husband may establish it, or her husband may make it void. But if her husband altogether hold his peace at her from day to day, then he establish all her vows, or all her bonds which are upon her. He confirmeth them, because he held his peace at her in the day, and that he heard them. But if he shall in any way make them void after that he hath heard them, then he shall bear her iniquity. So, dresses here with vows made, for the widowed woman, made before she's wedded and divorced. So there again, that husband, these vows, he's responsible for them if he don't speak up to start with. He's the authority figure, so he can't change his mind. And if he does later date, right there, it's like I said, if the husband changes his mind, he's going to bear the penalty. Now, most of these vows, like we're talking here, is not going to be the vow of death, I assume. So from what it looks like, it's going to be a matter of providing a sacrifice and confession at the tabernacle. A man's going to have to humble himself and make sacrifices to God. So that's how he's going to, so he can't just get out of allowing his wife or his widowed wife to make vows. He's responsible. Is what I'm saying. Ultimately, he's responsible. And he should be, because he should be making those type of decisions to start with, not putting them off. All right. So, now I'm going to read, 16, 13, 15, 16. About to get ready to 31. These are the statutes. Here's just the summary. These are the statutes which the Lord commanded Moses between a man and his wife, between the father and his daughter, being yet in her youth and in her father's house. Not that complicated. The main thing to get from here, the man of the home is the authority figure, and he needs to make those decisions on these vows, if they're legit or not. He needs to speak his piece and not agree to them. And takes somewhat of a strong hand for these men, but it's that's their responsibility. They need to do their job. They should be educated and see far enough into the future and see if these vows can be met or not. Make those decisions. Now, chapter 31. This is where we're going to get into God's vengeance. We got the vows out of the way. Something kind of foreign to me as far as vows, and all vows are not really can be messed up. And that's what I want to tell you. I about skipped by it, about forgot about it. But we go back and look here in the Old Testament, for us moving forward from where we're at now in Israel's history, if you'll think about, we had a man called Japheth, and I believe he was fighting the Amorites. They were having a battle with the Amorites. This is on into the book of Judges. Yeah, the book of Judges, the story about Japheth. And if I remember right, they were having a battle, and I think he made let me see. I think I made some notes on it. I thought I did. But make sure I didn't. Yeah, first, I know the story. I just want to make sure I get it. Judges chapter 11, we're going to read 30 through 35. I want to use God's word on this. I don't want to mess it up. It's going to be chapter 11, Judges chapter 11, verses 30 through 35. And like I said, this is on into the future, a future battle. And this is once, they're in the promised land during the time of the judges. And this is going to be after Joshua's gone. They're going to go through a period where they've got different. And these judges are not like judges you picture today sitting in a black robe. Most of these judges were military type leaders. All right, so Judges chapter 11, verses 30 through 35. Make sure I get it right. Yeah, and Jephthah vowed a vow. So this scripture starts off then, getting ready to this battle. Jephthah vowed a vow to the Lord and said, if thou shalt without fail deliver the children of Ammon into mine hands. So this is a vow that where man is wanting a good outcome, divine intervention from God. This is not something he can do on his own. He's asking God, he's pretty much asking God here, if you'll do this for me, God, this is the way this is going to be. I vow this vow that it shall be. Here's the part about the vow that's going to cause the trouble. He's needing God's divine intervention, so he's going to get it. And if he be victorious, here in verse 31, then it shall be that whatsoever. Now, he says whatsoever there. He didn't say whoever, whatsoever. Cometh forth of the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace. So when he gets back home from the children of Ammon, that's the people he's fighting now, the Ammonites. I think I must have said the Amorites. I get these ites mixed up. I'm sorry. And surely be the Lord, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. Boy, can you see the mistake in that right now? He's offering to, if he gets become victorious in this battle over these Ammonites, the first whatsoever comes out the front door, he's going to offer it up as a burnt offering. Let's go on here a little bit and see. So Jephthah passed over unto the children of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands. Well, he's been victorious, and he smote them from Aroer even until thou come to Minnith, even 20 cities, and into the plain and the vineyards with a very great slaughter. Thus the children of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel, and Jephthah came to Mizpah unto his house. So the battle's over, he's won, he's getting home. And behold, his daughter came out to meet him with timbrels and with dances. So whatsoever, the first thing to come out the door was his daughter. Now, do you think he really wants to offer her up as a burnt offering? He wasn't expecting that. So, like I said, we could go on. I'm not going to go in depth, but that's what happens with these people when they make these vows sometimes. They don't know what the outcome's going to be. They ain't into the future. So, and then the same thing, I got another example with Saul, and I hope I don't mess it up. I think I can remember most of it. But of course, y'all know King Saul, beautiful King Saul, big, strong man that the children of Israel wanted to be after this time period of the judges. Well, he ended up being a warring king. You know, there's wars going on during Saul's reign, and he had a son named Jonathan. Well, they had a battle, and I think they were fighting the Philistines. This is going to be another little story about vows and how they can backfire on you. And of course, you know, y'all know the story of Saul. He had his shortcomings big time, and his reign really didn't look that good to me. And of course, David takes over and all. But leading up to that, he has a son, Jonathan, and he's fighting the Philistines. And he's sitting under a pomegranate tree. That's how that chapter starts out. And I think that's in, if you want to look it up, 1 Samuel 14. And I'm going to try to tell this without going over there if I can. But King Saul's under a pomegranate tree at this time. That's what that chapter starts out. So that kind of gives you, here we are in a battle situation, and Saul's under a pomegranate tree. But the story goes on in that chapter that Jonathan's talking to his armor bearer. And he says, if God be with us, you know, when God's in the battle, this is not exact scripture, I can't memorize it. But if God be with us, there's not a battle that can't be won. Battles can be won by God and God alone. He's telling his armor bearer this. And so he says, you know, I think if we go up to the Philistines' camp, and if God, you know, if they tell us, come on up here, we got something to show you, or they invite them on up there, that God will be victorious. We'll go into the camp and we'll whoop them. Just me and you, him and the armor bearer. But he said, now if they say, stay down there, we got something to show you. We're going to bring it down there and show you. That Jonathan says, well, no, God ain't with us, so we ain't going to do this battle. So anyway, him and the armor bearer goes up, and sure enough, the Philistines tell them to come on up here. We got something to show you, something to show them. So, well, Jonathan, he says, the Lord's with us, let's go. So they get in amongst the Philistines, and man, they're whooping them. And out in the distance, the armies, you know, we got two warring armies here with the distance between them, and they can see the dust boiling out there, and something's going on, and Saul's like, what's going on over there? And the soldiers tell them that, man, there's a fighting amongst them over there, and it's Jonathan and his armor bearer, and they're whooping them. And then I want to get the exact words of Saul. Yeah, it's in Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 14. Let me find that. I want to get this right out of Saul's mouth, not Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 14. I might have to look through here for a second. I ain't got it marked, but that's all right. We'll find it. I know the chapter, and I know the general situation. All right. Answered Jonathan his armor bearer and said, come up to us and we'll show you a thing. And Jonathan said unto his armor bearer, come up after me, for the Lord hath delivered them into the land of Israel. So this is where Jonathan said we're going to go up and fight them. And this here is a battle too. When I got to reading this too, this ain't just a battle of Jonathan and his armor bearer doing the fighting. But God put a confusion amongst them too. It talks about the earthquaking in this scene right here too. So God was supporting Jonathan and his armor bearer. Let me find this. Saul said, "Bring hither the ark of God." So Saul's getting his stuff together. He's getting ready to go over there to fight. He's found out. All right. Sorry, I should have marked this. But anyway, it's right there somewhere. I'm just not spotting it. But Saul, he pretty much said, "Cursed be the man." So he's getting the battle cry together. He's getting all excited, wanting to go find him. He goes, "Cursed be the man that eateth, eat any food before the evening, any food till evening during this battle." All right, so he's got all these soldiers over here ready to go fight, and Jonathan and his armor bearer is over there fighting. And the thing he says is, "Cursed be any man that eats anything before the evening." Now, anybody knows fighting men have got to have some food in their system. So he's plagued them. I mean, he's hurt them right off the bat. But they're going to be victorious. The whole battle's going to be victorious. But the thing is that once it's over, guess who wasn't there to hear this this oath that King Saul made concerning don't eat nothing till the evening come? His very own son Jonathan. And the Bible says the trees were down and there was honey on the ground, and he took the end of his staff, or I don't know what it was a rod or something, and he tasted the honey that was there. Jonathan did. And he had no idea. And so then here comes King Saul, and Jonathan finds out that he shouldn't have ate, because King Saul had made that decree, that swear, that anybody's going to die to eat any food before evening. Well, his own son, Jonathan, was the one that took a bite of honey. All right, and if what it's looking like, and King Saul, I hope I can find this part. But anyway, the penalty is going to be death. And when the soldiers hear it, King Saul, of course, Jonathan goes to him and says, I ate before evening. I ate a bite of honey. And King Saul, in his craziness, he goes, "Well, you're going to have to die." Well, the soldiers stood up, and the people around there said, "No, this ain't going to happen today, because this battle was won not because of a decree that you did, but because God won the battle. And, that's why we were victorious." So the people overrode Saul on that. But that's just another example of somebody willing to make a vow or an oath, and they don't know what the long-term outcome's going to be. If they can't see into the future, they don't see what it's going to affect. So it affected his own son in a bad way. So anyway, I hope I didn't mess that up too bad, but I should have made better notes on that. But anyway, chapter 31, back on it, we're getting the vengeance of the Midianites. This comes back from chapter 25. Like I said a while ago, the Midianite women were placed around the camp. It led to immoral behavior by the men, and then idolatry soon follows. You can kind of see that through the Bible, this immoral behavior between men and idolatry. It just runs hand in hand together. You can even see it today. People, with immoral behavior, it runs into idolatry, just bad things altogether. And it ain't no different now than it was back then. But anyway, this is going to be the end of Balaam. It's going to be the end of the Midianites. And we're going to read a little bit, if we get that far, on purifications of warriors. Why do warriors need to be purified at this time? Warriors do what in battle? They kill people. They're exposed to dead bodies. So we know by the law, anybody that comes in contact with dead bodies need to be cleaned. They need to go through a period of cleansing. We're going to read a little bit about that. And then the vision of the spoils. After this battle, of course, they wipe these people out. They're going to have gold. They're going to have cattle, sheep, etc. Like they're going to have herds to be divided up. So all this is going to be divided up amongst the tribes. So we're going to read into that. So let me see. Read 1 through 6, chapter 31. I'm back over here in Samuel. Wait a minute. Here we go. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Avenge the children of Israel of the Avenge the children of Israel of the Midianites. Afterward shalt thou be gathered unto thy people. And Moses spake unto the people, saying, Arm some of yourselves unto war, and let them go against the Midianites and avenge the Lord of Midian. Verse 4. Of every tribe, 1,000 throughout all the tribes of Israel, going to get 1,000 fighting men out of each tribe, shall ye send to war. So there were delivered out of the thousands of Israel 1,000 of every tribe, 12,000 armed for war. And Moses sent them to war, 1,000 of every tribe, them and Phinehas. Now, this here's a little an insight to what this war is going to be. This is going to be a holy war that we're going to have right here, because what did we read and studied before? Usually the high priest or the priest, Phinehas ain't the high priest. His father Eleazar is, but he's going to be in this battle. It's because it's going to be a holy war. This is God's going to be involved in. God's waging this because he's avenging the Midianites. All right, so we got Phinehas going to be in here. It makes it a little different. And he's the son, of course, like I said, Eleazar the priest, to the war with holy instruments and the trumpets to blow in hand. So we got the trumpets that they have and the holy instruments. Don't say it specifically right here, but I believe most commentators say that probably refers to like the Ark of the Covenant would be one of the holy implements that they took into this battle. Of course, this here is going to be this is the last battle of Moses' life. If you remember in the earlier chapters, or toward where we finished up, God told him he's soon to die. So Moses is around for this last battle of the Midianites. It's going to be victorious. All right, verses 7 through 12. And they warred against the Midianites, as the Lord commanded Moses, and they slew all the males. And they slew the kings of Midian beside the rest of them that were slain, namely Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, Reba, and 5 kings of Midian. Balaam also, the son of Beor, they slew with the sword. So Balaam met his end. I kept talking about when we was reading about him, he's going to get what's coming to him. And so that's what happens. And you think about it, Balaam wasn't from this part. If you remember, we read he was from Mesopotamia, I believe. So what come to my mind? What was he down in here messing around with these people for anyway? I'd say he was probably after some riches like he was before. Probably up to no good. So he's still around. He gets tangled up down here and he gets defeated. And it's the end of Balaam. So the Bible don't tell us why he was down here, but he's got a tendency to hang around these people. And the children of Israel took all the women of Midian captives and their little ones, and took the spoil of their cattle and all their flocks and all their goods. And they burnt all their cities wherein they dwelt, and all their goodly castles, and it's just, like their homes, wherever they left, with fire. And they took all the spoil and all the prey, both of men and of beasts. And they brought the captives and the prey and the spoil unto Moses and Eleazar, the priest, who unto the congregation of the children of Israel, unto the camp at the plains of Moab, which are beyond the Jordan near Jericho. So we know they're still in the camp across the Jordan River from Jericho. That's where we've been trying to get to. We go into this Canaan land, it's going to overtake Jericho, but we had to fight this war first. And also here, we're about to read here about them bringing all these captives in here. Of course, we know the males have been destroyed, but we're going to see, of course, what happened back in 25. What was used to create immoral behavior between the men of Israel? It was these Midianite women. This is what was used. It's what Balaam told them to use. All right, so now I'm going to read 13 through 16. And Moses and Eleazar the priest and all the princes of the congregation went forth to meet them without the camp. All right, so they brought all the captives up here. You think it's going to be everybody's going to be happy and excited when they was victorious and they bringing in the spoils and all this, but it's kind of going to be not such a happy situation. And Moses said unto them, Have ye saved all the women alive? Now I know that sounds brutal, but like we just said, they were used to create immoral behavior with the men of Israel, and they succumb to it, and that's what we're faced with, that they're bringing back to the camp now. These same women that had been doing it, it created this problem, and they brought them back to the camp again. So now, at first glance, you just think about it, well, they brought them back, but then I got to thinking, well, they brought them back. This is the second time. What do they think? What do these soldiers think is going to happen? Really, what's going on in their head? What's in their hearts? They should have known better. They should have done the battle and left and never looked back, if you think about it. So there ain't really much changed in these men's minds, if you ask me. So anyway, Moses is upset. It's obvious by his way he's talking here. Behold, these caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to commit trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor. And there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. Like I said, that behavior caused 24,000 to die back in chapter 25. And they bring these women back into the camp. Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman that hath known man by lying with him. But all the women, children that have not known a man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves, and do ye abide without the camp 7 days. Okay, I need to stop there. So those females that were that age, had not been with men, were to be, they could keep them, and they were going to be maid servants within the camp. And all that is that would be people that they had back then to do the cooking, the cleaning, the child care, the laundry, etc., like that. So they could keep them for that. But the rest had to be destroyed. Okay, so now I'm going to read 13. No, I'm going to read 19 through 24 right quick. Yeah, I got a minute. And do you abide without the camp 7 days, whoever killed any person, that makes them unclean. Like I told you, soldiers kill people exposed to dead bodies, they're unclean. And whosoever, and you know, don't think of that as just clean as dirty. I think we've kind of put together now as we go through the scripture in this chapter that death is not clean. Life is clean. God is life. Satan is death. So, you know, even though this was Old Testament law, there's a line, a solid line, of black and white, death and life. God is life. And so to be exposed to death, that which is of Satan, which is the devil, is to be, you got to be clean. There got to be a period. And you think about it, nothing like the battlefield and people killing each other and stuff like that. If that ain't death, if that ain't bad for a person, I don't know what is. So I think they needed a period of cleansing, at a minimum 7 days, to get themselves straightened out a little bit. So, but then the main thing is that each time we see life, God is life. That's the main thing about it. And whoever touched any slain, purify both yourselves and your captives on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. And purify your raiment, and that's what you wear, and all is made of skins, and all work of goat's hair, and all things made of wood. And Eleazar the priest said unto the men of war which went to battle, this is the ordinance of the law which the Lord commanded Moses. Only the gold and silver, the brass, the iron, and the tin, and the lead, everything that may abide the fire, you shall make it go through the fire, and it shall be clean. Nevertheless, it shall be purified with water of separation. If you remember, that's where they took they sacrificed the red heifer, and the ashes of the red heifer is put into the water to make water of purification. Not in the fire you shall make it go through the water, and ye shall wash your clothes on the 7th day, and ye shall be clean, and afterward ye shall come into the camp. And that's as far as I'm going to go, today, 24. All right. Well, I didn't get as far as I thought I would. I got bogged down there. But anyway, let's dismiss with a prayer. All right. Dear God, I thank you for this day, God. I thank you for your word. I thank you for the truth that's in your word,